to Kathaa Yaana. This is Kathaa Yaana's new series, Tuesday Toast, where every Tuesday I bring to you quick, crunchy, bite-sized, insightful stories covering a wide range of topics. Today is the first episode, the inaugural episode, and therefore I have intentionally kept this episode longer than I usually intend to have. And for this inaugural episode, we have a special guest who is going to share her life story with you. So let us welcome our guest for the inaugural episode, Salmona. Hi, I'm Salmona. You know how excited I am about sharing my life story with you? I'm a salmon fish. My life story is always a topic of interest to not just scientists, but also to many adventure seekers. Among all the different types of fish, I'm the only one that lives both in fresh waters and salty waters. I am born and brought up in the river, and then I migrate to the sea to become a well accomplished adult. And then I return home to give birth to my future generation. And this journey back home that I undertake is considered by many as epic. Here, I have made a small album highlighting the different important stages of my life. I would like to show them to you. Come. Here, this is the beautiful stream where I was born. This is one of the streams in the river of Yukon near Alaska. And do you see this? This is my birthplace. It is called the red in our language, which is nothing but a nest. And this stream is not just my birthplace, it has been the birthplace of my parents, my grandparents, and almost all of my ancestors. Come, I will take you to my flashback. It was September 2015. My parents were ready to spawn. When my mother was ready to lay her eggs, she went near the gravel near the corner of the stream, and with the help of her tail, she pushed as much as gravel that she could. She pushed them all aside, created a small depression, and she pushed thousands and thousands of these bright orange colored eggs. And once she had done that, my father fertilized all these eggs with his milk. And when he had done that, my mother came back and covered the eggs with some loose mud and gravel so that the eggs would be safe. And once they had spawned, my parents, just a couple of days later, they died. I never got to see my parents. I never got to live with them. But you know what? Though I never lived with them physically, I still had them in spirits. They were always with me, helping me, nurturing me to grow when I lived in the river. Then, just 2 months later, in November 2015, I hatched out of one of the eggs. Look, such a tiny creature I was. I was called an Analvin then. I was so tiny, so fragile. I just came out of the egg that I didn't know what to eat, how to feed, and that is why I had come with a food sack attached with me, a ready made lunch box. Whenever I wanted, I would absorb food from here and I would not feel hungry. And then, yeah, since I was so tiny, I was so vulnerable to predators, and any big fish would immediately catch and eat me. And that is why I always clung myself in the nest on the walls of the gravel. I never came out of the nest at all. I was there hiding in the nest almost, you know. And once, slowly, when the food sack, I had absorbed all the food from the food sack and I had grown a little bigger. Here, some months later, I became a small fish and I was called a fry. See, I had a small tail and small fins with which I could now swim a little out of the gravel, out of the nest. I started venturing out into the river a little bit here and there in search of some better food like small insects. And then, some more months later, I grew into a par. The characteristic here when I was a par was this. I had grown, no doubt, but I had these camouflage thick bars. Why? Because this time I also had grown a little bolder that I started swimming close to the surface of the water in search of more nutritious and richer food like planktons and other small fish. And I was again very vulnerable. Any predator could catch me. And that is why when I had these bars, they would think that I was maybe some other mud particle or some gravel particle, and that is why they could never catch me. I was a trickster when I was a bar. Yeah, here. Then later, I became a smolt. When I was a smolt, I had no camouflage bars attached to me. I had a smooth, silvery body. Of course, why not? I was a teenager, come on. Why would I want to have any blemishes on my skin? Just like any other teenager, even I wanted my body to be free of blemishes. I wanted to be confident and positive by the way I look, by the way I feel. And just like any other teenager, this was the time for me to also begin my adventure. I was excited to begin my adventure. Yes, my adventure of traveling from the river to the sea, from the fresh water to the salty water. How exciting that time was, I can't tell you. But before I ventured out into the sea, I had to adapt myself to start living in the sea. That is why at the estuary, you see the place where the river and the sea meet. There is a brackish water, which is a mix of both fresh water and salty water. I lived in that brackish water for some time so that my body would undergo an complex internal change called smoltification that would prepare my body and all my organs to live in the salty water. And once I was prepared here, I began my journey downstream into the sea, Bering Sea, which was 1,600 kilometers downstream from the place where I lived. Here, it was in the sea that I grew into an adult. I think I lived in that sea for 2 to 3 years, maybe. And when I was there in the sea, I just enjoyed my life. I fed on insects, crustaceans, mollusks, and many other small fish. There, I developed full swimming capabilities and reproductive capabilities. Now that I am an adult, it is time for me also to give birth to my future generation of salmons. But where do I give them birth? Definitely not here in the sea. The best option was to go back to my native stream, the stream where I was born. And so I began my journey back to my native stream when the weather was conducive and it was the fall season when I was prepared to go back to my native stream. I had to go now, this time upstream, 1,600 kilometers upstream. And let me tell you, that was no easy feat at all. I had to travel so much, I had to move around tricky obstacles, and it was so challenging. But the most challenging part of this journey, let me tell you, was this: going up so many waterfalls like this. Oh, it was so exhausting. It was so challenging going over these waterfalls. Their currents were so rapid, they were strong, and I had to jump over all of them. Since my muscles were adapted for sharp, short bursts of energy, I employed formidable acceleration to launch even up to 3 meters high. But I wouldn't be successful immediately. Not in the first try at all. I'd fail time after time, but my desire to push on was so strong, I never gave up. And there was another trick I used here whenever it was necessary. I used the strong upward current created when falling water displays the water beneath it. And that was helpful for me to go launch myself and jump above all these waterfalls. But as if all of these were not enough, I had to escape the jaws of bears and other predators, the nets of the fishermen who would always be there waiting around to have feast over me. This was no smaller game. I had played a big, huge game of persistence and luck. Then, after all the circus, finally, I reached my native stream. Yes, back in my native stream where I was born. This time, I was called a Celt. Now, I'm called a Celt because this is that my reproductive time, my reproduction time this is. And why am I looking red here? Let me tell you, throughout my journey from the sea to the river, I haven't eaten anything. And so the fat reserves that I had have all been used up. And that is why all the pigments that color my skin are showing up here. Now, if you ask me how I was able to reach the stream, that stream where I was born exactly there, by two things I reached here. One, I followed the Earth's magnetic field, and the second, it was due to my sharp sense of smell. My stream has a unique smell of its own, smelling which I could trace back to it immediately. This is where I am here now in September 2020. Now it is time for me to lay my eggs. Just like how my mother did, I am going to do. After which I will soon perish. My children too wouldn't be able to see me. But I will still live on with them, just like how my parents lived on with me, providing them with nutrition from my decomposed body. I had a very short life, just 5 years. Like all the beings on earth, my life too had its shares of odds, struggles, opportunities, fun, enjoyment. I'd say I've lived an amazing life by doing just that which I was simply supposed to do. And that's what my predecessors did, and my successors will do too. If it weren't for my homing instinct, I wouldn't have lived my life to the fullest. My voyage upstream, back home to my natal stream, that was the most thrilling and most rewarding of all things in my life. And I want my future generation to savor it too. I want them to live, thrive, and narrate about the salmon fish community's life cycle and epic voyage. Thank you, Salmona. Wasn't Salmona's life story inspiring to us in some ways at least? If you come to think of it, we too undergo and experience various phases in our lives that comes with its own baggage of happiness, sadness, problems, struggles, rewards, opportunities, emotions and feelings. But all of them would be impermanent. They are never permanent. So, the point to reflect here is that whatever the case may be, why not turn all of them to our advantage and make our short lives beautiful and remembrance worthy? If you like this video, do give us a thumbs up and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Do share this video with people who you think might be interested in watching. This is Lakshmi taking your leave for now. I'll see you next Tuesday with another toast.